A brand new Young Sheldon Season 7 set image reveals the return of a forgotten character in time for George's funeral with just 4 episodes left. Sheldon's time in Medford is also winding down as he focuses on his move to Pasadena, California. Back at home, the Coopers are busy, but they don't know yet what's coming their way with the upcoming death of George. As established in The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon's father was dead before the events of the nerd-centric sitcom. Specifics about his demise are still tightly under wraps, but his fate is already set in stone in line of George's confirmed funeral in the Young Sheldon final. A new set photo reveals the return of Coach Wilkins. Check out the image from Doc Farrow's Instagram below the Young Sheldon Season 7 set. Image shows Farrow with Georgie actor Montana Jordan in between filming. Based on their formal attire, it's safe to say that they are shooting George's funeral scene, as revealed by previous set images. George's funeral will not just be for the Coopers. Many of Young Sheldon's most notable guest stars will also make an appearance, all to grieve with Sheldon and his family what to expect from George's death and funeral in Young Sheldon. George's death will be a big shock to the Coopers, while George's funeral is already confirmed for the first half of the Young Sheldon final. There are still a lot of details about his demise and the subsequent fallout from it that remains unknown, since George is confirmed to survive until Season 7 Episode 12. It's safe to say that he will pass away either at the end of that same outing or the opening scene of the following week. The lack of setup from Young Sheldon reinforces the idea that George's death is unexpected, and it will change the trajectory of his family's life drastically. Sheldon's father has a couple of smaller arcs left, which include his vasectomy arc and a new work opportunity. After those narratives, his story comes to an official close. There are a couple of potential reasons for his demise, but the most obvious would be something to do with his health throughout Young Sheldon's 7-season run. George has suffered too many heart attacks. He survived both of them without any permanent damage, but it sets a precedent for a third deadly one. Another possible reason for his death may have something to do with his upcoming vasectomy in Young Sheldon Season 7 Episode 11, which is brought on by Mary's sudden baby fever and fear of being an empty nester. On the heels of retconning George's cheating scandal snafu, Young Sheldon also recently fixed George's casting plot hole, something that the show didn't have to do, but is great to be finally addressed. Sheldon's father has a couple of smaller arcs left, which include his vasectomy arc and a new work opportunity. After those narratives, his story comes to an official close. Coach Wilkins' return for George's funeral highlights Young Sheldon missed opportunity. George has a life outside of being a family man. Young Sheldon started not long after George and the Coopers moved to Medford, Texas. This was prompted by George getting fired from his old job and shunned by his old community. Wanting a fresh start, the family said settled in the same town that Nima was living in so they could get some help with babysitting during the earliest years of Young Sheldon. George's arc outside his home was regularly developed because Georgie was a part of his football team, while Sheldon attended the same high school that employed him. This meant that Young Sheldon regularly had plots concerning George's job and the friends he had at school, like Coach Wilkins. It helped flesh out the character to become a more nuanced player, coming from the one-dimensional punchline that he was in The Big Bang Theory. Unfortunately, as Young Sheldon's storytelling moved away from Medford High School, with George dropping out and Sheldon transferring to East Texas Tech, there were barely any plots that featured George at his job. Wilkins' attendance at his funeral highlights this missed narrative opportunity for the prequel. What happens to the Coopers after George's death? George's death will change Sheldon and his family's future. Losing George will have massive ramifications for Sheldon and the rest of the Coopers. The Big Bang Theory didn't reveal specifics about his death, but thanks to adult Georgie's Deb before Sheldon and Amy's wedding, It was established that the clan dealt with the loss differently George's death left. Mary, overwhelmed with grief that she couldn't function, Missy returned to her rebellious way to cope with the tragedy, while Sheldon continued with his studies. Georgie, on the other hand, took over the family as the new head of household.